so much. I'm sure you have also the television ads out there. I know on the one camp since at least January. So we wanted to get the two candidates together, and we're thankful that Senator Zeldin has agreed to come. If you don't know, I have a disappointment for you, I guess. George Demos will not be here. I understand, I share your sentiments. We really worked to get both, and we had disagreements. Down just a little bit, John, okay? We had disagreements on both sides trying to set up, you know, the format for the debate and so on, and there were disagreements. But we have emails that they definitely said they wanted to debate, they were ready to debate. We had the procedure down, and then at the last minute, it was on Friday, I believe, that they wanted, now I'm not here to slant anybody, but I have to tell it like it is. And he wanted 10 security people from a private security firm or the Southampton Town Police. And then, what got worse, he sent another email and said that one of our number was at a Zeldin affair on Saturday, and therefore he couldn't come to the debate because of that. I think it was at your house, Linda, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it just really disappointed us because up to that point, we were going into this in an impartial way, but we can see tonight that George is a no-show, and the senator has arrived. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have questions, and it doesn't mean you might not have some things you disagree with, but at least the senator is here, and we appreciate that, and that means a lot.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming out tonight for the second debate of this primary campaign. You know, it's been an interesting several months since we started this race. We first announced at the beginning of October that we were going to seek the Republican nomination and the Conservative Party nomination for Congress. We have an incumbent congressman who our offices might work well together, but he and I fundamentally disagree on so many important issues as far as the direction of this country.
Right.
This campaign has been an interesting experience for me. The 1st Congressional District I call home. I was born and raised here on Long Island, K through 12, in the William Floyd School District. My daughters go to the same elementary school that I went to.
Did you pass them?
Oh yeah. My daughters go to the same elementary school that I went to when I was their age. I own a home, pay property taxes here. We work hard for our community, involved in literally hundreds of causes to try to help our neighbors. This is home for me. You know, and tonight is just another example of just how disgraceful this campaign against us has been run. And, you know, there are literally millions of dollars that are getting spent through this advertising bubble by my primary opponent on TV and radio and mail, saying stuff that is not true, but saying stuff that polls well. And so really, his campaign has been an entire head fake. And fortunately for us, people are seeing through it. And I'm sure for all of you here tonight, as we see an empty chair, you know exactly what we mean. Domestically and with our foreign policy, I believe that our country can be headed in a better direction. First, let me start about what I am observing overseas. In the Ukraine, people ask us, what would we do about a Russian president who literally looks into the mirror and thinks of himself as the next Vladimir the Great? And I think, of no coincidence, literally days after the Pentagon announced that they're reducing troop strength to the lowest level in 74 years, that Vladimir Putin decides he wants to annex his neighbor. In Iran, this president and Secretary Kerry announced a deal with regards to Iran suspending uranium enrichment. Yet we all know that Iran not only has refuted the terms of that deal almost instantly, but have continued to pursue uranium capability. In Libya, whether it's Benghazi or Syria, we have important questions that we as Americans want answered. And here in our little corner of America, we have an option every couple of years to elect a congressman. And all throughout our country, there are 435 districts where people have an opportunity to go to the polls to hold their elected officials accountable. And people have criticized Republicans for creating a select committee to investigate what happened at Benghazi. And you know what? I don't really care that there is so much partisan criticism of those who support this committee. The fact of the matter is that people who killed a U.S. ambassador and 3 of his people pulled up to the front gate of a U.S. embassy, and our security, and if you want to call it that, got into their pickups and drove away. And those people who killed our ambassador and just literally walked right through the front door of a compound should be held accountable. There are more answers than questions. There are more questions than answers at this particular point in time. And we're demanding answers.
Yes.
And in Syria, our president says there will be consequences. But he is so inconsistent in the manner in which he applies the foreign policy that we all are demanding more accountability. Here at home, we have neighbors who are struggling to make ends meet. We have people who are working, but not making enough. Unemployment's a problem, but underemployment is a problem as well. People look at how much we make here on Long Island and they think that we're all rich. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Well, you might not be as bad echo. People see how much money we make here and they think that we're all rich. And the fact is, it's our cost of living. It doesn't matter if you make $70,000, $80,000 a year. And if you're married, you have 2 kids, you own a home, you're barely surviving. Barely paying your bills, trying to avoid foreclosure on your home, trying not to default on your credit cards. We're struggling. The energy costs, the healthcare costs.
That's right.
And I think it's so important to improve our economy. And there's a responsibility from local governments, town, county, state, federal, all getting out of the way of our job creators to have a better business climate to help us. As far as Obamacare goes, I strongly believe that it is fatally flawed and needs to be repealed. I have never supported Obamacare in any way, shape, or form, and never will. But my opponents, it has been saying otherwise because it polls well. And lastly, because I know that I have a 4-minute opening.
That little buzzer was in 4 minutes, but go ahead.
And I also want to,
I'm sure George isn't going to say anything, so
I will, on his behalf, I will yield myself a minute of his time. As far as our domestic agenda goes, I name a few issues. With the economy, the need to control our national debt and our deficits, and repeal Obamacare, to stop Common Core. There are so many issues here at home. And if this president has total control of Congress, I'm very scared for what his last 2 years will result in for our country. So here in the 1st Congressional District, and important U.S. Senate races all across the country, we need to get involved. We need to take back our country.
That's right.
We need to hold this administration accountable. And we can do our part to send a powerful message to Washington right here in the 1st Congressional District. I thank you all for coming out, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Whether or not Mr. Demos accepted the invitation.
Yes, he did. We have emails to show that, telephone conversation James had with his campaign manager. Really, the last thing we would want to come into this event would be in a partial way. We were impartial, tried to be with both sides, and yes, but now he's trying to deny that he
Yes,
did.
put out a press release that says it's...
So you have a question?
I don't have a question.
Oh, okay.
but
But I'm not running this year, so I just... Anybody else? Question?
What do you have to say?
Where's the hand?
Over here.
Oh, okay.
This is really a political question. I'd like to know how you would address handling that Marine that's in Mexican prison right now. It seems like nothing is being done whatsoever. I know we give plenty of aid to Mexico, and still we don't do anything about it.
You know, it's a great question. It's something that I've been following very closely, as I'm sure that you have. That is a U.S. Marine, and that U.S. Marine is being held captive by another country. And even though they are our allies to the south, and we want to have friendly relations with the rest of the world, the fact of the matter is that they need to release our U.S. Marine today. And I think that there are so many challenges that we face as a country because we have too much deference. We give too much deference to our neighbors from the south. There are a lot of challenges we face with drugs, with border security, with regards to crimes that happen on both sides of the border. And when you have any American, let alone a U.S. service member, when you have any American who's being wrongfully held captive right across our border, we need to really look at all of our options to go and get him. That really should be on the table. And again, going back to my comments from my opening, is that this president has become so inconsistent with what he means when he says that there will be consequences, that I fear for that U.S. Marine's health and safety. That was the buzzer. I feel concerned for that. I just figured out.
Go ahead.
That's what the buzzer was earlier. Got it.
George
Okay.
won't say anything. Go ahead.
So I'm concerned for his health and his safety, because no one is taking this president and his administration seriously. And the fact is, we have tons of leverage to get that U.S. Marine back home right now.
My question is, the country just suffered another mass murder a few days ago. And I was wondering, accepting the rights that we have under the Second Amendment, things are being discussed in terms of gun safety. Can you see something that the country can do to look, something that the country can do if you're in office, something you can do that would help Americans feel safe, that they're not worried about being part of a mass murder somewhere? Thank you.
Now, I get the feeling I don't want to judge what your personal opinions are by any means. I just want to tell you mine. And before I do, I'll tell you that one of the great quotes of former Mayor Ed Koch was, "If you agree with me 9 times out of 12, vote for me. If you agree with me 12 times out of 12, see a psychiatrist." There may be a lot of issues that we can agree upon. I personally believe, and there are people who strongly disagree with me, I believe that the best thing to do when you have a bad guy with a gun is for a good guy with a gun. And there are a lot of people who have a different opinion than I do. They're strongly in favor of very strict gun control. Whenever an incident happens, there is a renewed call and a motion in favor of some type of gun control to take it to the next level. In New York State, we enacted after Newtown, we enacted the SAFE Act. I oppose the SAFE Act. I co-sponsored the bill to repeal the SAFE Act. I believe it's unconstitutional. I am hopeful that the U.S. Supreme Court, if it has to go up that far, which I think it will, that the U.S. Supreme Court overturns the SAFE Act. And the reason why I believe that it's unconstitutional, if you look at the D.C. versus Heller decision, and we spoke about this the other night during our debate, is that the DC handgun ban was overturned because it was banning an entire classification of firearms commonly used by law-abiding citizens. That's essentially what the assault weapons ban of the SAFE Act does. And if you look at the way in which the SAFE Act was written, you can tell that the people who wrote the SAFE Act had a fundamental misunderstanding of our Second Amendment. They essentially said, if you read the memo, there's a part that says anything not needed for hunting or sporting activity should be essentially banned. I could go a lot further and deeper on this, but I have some very strong opinions that, and to your question about other stuff that we can do, I believe that there are mental health, very real mental health concerns. You have individuals gaining access to firearms who shouldn't because the firearms are not secured by the owner. So I have some, certainly very open-minded to certain proposals, but I do not believe that we should enact strict laws that are only going to be followed by law-abiding citizens that only give more of an unfair advantage to criminals.
Try it.
Senator Zeldin, when we send you to Washington, not if, are you willing to stand up against Republican leadership if they don't stand for what you believe in?
Absolutely. There have been. The question was with regards to when you disagree with Republican leadership, do you have the courage to stand up against them? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there have been. The last question we're asking about the SAFE Act. I'll tell you, there has been a tremendous amount of arm twisting that has been done to try to encourage me to support the SAFE Act. And I have never done that, and I wouldn't ever do that because it's something that I fundamentally disagree with. I don't like the way in which it was enacted, and I took a stance that was against my Republican leadership. There have been a lot of bills where I have voted no on, where I was maybe the only person to vote no on, or one of just a handful of people to vote no on, and it's important. And in certain issues you might disagree with me on. I vote no when we had the red light camera, the speed camera bills, and there are people who believe in the red light cameras and the speed cameras, but it's something that I fundamentally disagree with. Just to illustrate the point as well of just, I don't know, at times you get frustrated with the process, is we spent an hour debating just a couple weeks ago making yogurt the new state snack in Albany. I was the only Republican who voted against making yogurt the new state snack. And people came up to me afterwards and said, "Hey Lee, what's your problem with yogurt?" I said, "I love yogurt. I know that my constituents didn't send me up here to make yogurt the new state snack. They want me up here protecting their freedoms and liberties, covering their taxes." And there are a lot of other examples like that where I have disagreed with leadership, and regardless of whether I'm in Albany or down in Washington, I would continue to do that.
I am so proud of seeing our next representative to to Washington. But right now, I'm going to say to you, look what the head of New York City is doing. He's asking everyone in their town to issue ID cards. Okay, we out here need to employ, people need help in their businesses, I realize that. We've got to work the visa system. We've got to have accountability out here, and we're not permittedly, okay, because they're afraid of being sued in town hall. What I need to have happen out here is for the people that are working, that came in here without their paperwork, at least they have some place to go, okay? To say, look, I want to get in line, I want to be part of this community. But they can't just come in here and live here because we don't know who they are. So we need the security and the quality of life issues to be addressed. With your help, we'll help you. Thank you very much.
Well, that was, a statement. I would say that, there have been a lot of conservatives I've spoken to who have had some fascinating ideas with regards to legal immigration. Conservatives, rock solid conservatives who no amnesty. Right, but so and that's where there's a disagreement. There's definitely a disagreement between conservatives and moderates and liberals with regards to this immigration issue. Everyone agrees that our immigration process is flawed. There is disagreement on the best way forward. And our congressman supports the comprehensive immigration bill that you saw drafted in the Senate. Respectfully, I totally disagree with him on his analysis. There is a lot of support for his position. There's a lot of support for ours. I would say to your point, with regards to legal immigration, is it's another example of tons of bureaucratic red tape. You have people who come here and they work on the North Fork and the South Fork, and they go back home. They are seasonal workers. They pay taxes. Their employers fill out all their paperwork, and these employers are suffering, and they want to follow the rules, and the people they bring want to follow the rules. We also have a problem with people who come here illegally and then remain here. And that's something else that we have to address. We have to deal with. We also have a lot of employers who are gaining competitive advantages over their competition by cutting corners and not paying taxes and not having the proper accountability on their employees. So I think that we agree fundamentally that there's stuff that we need to address our immigration problems. But there's some strong disagreement based on principles. It's not partisanship. I really believe that there are true philosophical differences between many Republicans and Democrats in Washington on the best way forward.
Thank you. Senator, in addition to the great national issues when you get to Washington, there are always constituent and local issues. And on the East End and on Long Island as a whole, the waters and bays have been a long-term one. You have saved us from the saltwater fishing license, but federal regulations on our treasured fisheries are killing. And when you get there, we haven't had a good representative from New York since Norman Lent, which betrays my age, which is many, many, many years ago. What do you think you can do that will be different and better?
And so one of our problems as a state, as we enter into all these different regional agreements, there are different councils and commissions where rules are set across state lines, and New York seems to end up getting the short end of the stick. I think that we need to update our data management. It's very outdated. There are estimates that are made as far as our own fisheries here in Suffolk County that is resulting on smaller takes, smaller size limits, smaller bag limits. Up in Albany, I've been involved in a lot of these fisheries issues, and I think that one of our biggest problems as a region, as a state, as an island, I guess, is that we're part of these multi-state commissions that are entering into these coalitions and enacting policies that are hurting us. So we have people coming from Connecticut, coming from New Jersey. They're taking our fish, going back to their own state. We are hurting, our employers are hurting, the recreational community is hurting. So it's both commercial and recreational, and we need someone fighting for our fishing industry. I would also add to your question is that as far as local issues go, the Fire Island to Montauk Point plan, we heard our congressman talk about $700 million that was coming to fund this FIB plan. And while we see Nassau County, Jones Beach get built back up, by the first Memorial Day, Staten Island, Queens, Brooklyn, Jersey, everyone else is getting all this funding to rebuild their shores. We have not seen a dollar of this money. And our congressman needs to be held accountable for not delivering on all of these press releases and press conferences that he had, patting himself on the back, and Schumer patting himself on the back for delivering money for FIB. They need to be held accountable. November is going to be that opportunity.
First of all, Mr. Zeldin, I thank you for your service. I took a gander at the Constitution of the New York State. This state was ran by this. To me, I consider New York State one of the greatest states in this nation. If the legislature within New York State ran this state according to the Constitution, this state will be restored as the greatest state in the nation. Also with the veterans. I have a buddy of mine who put over 20 years in the United States Navy. That poor guy, he went to the veterans over here in Northport, and they wouldn't give him any dental work or anything like that. The only thing they'll do is feed him with medication and maybe pull a tooth. He was captured by some group down in Colombia as he was fixing a ship. You know, he was a Navy engineman. They took him, and I'm not lying when I say this, they strung him up, upside down, and he was about to get a Colombian necktie. Okay? Now, the thing is, he went through a little torture, but they wouldn't give him any benefits because he had to be either a prisoner of war, shot in the face or the skull, or there was some other thing I don't really remember. This is something I like to see straightened out for the veterans. I'm very concerned about this and about the people who help protect this country and who have died for it.
Well, thank you for both parts of that question. I would just like to say, first off, I believe that the United States Constitution is a beautiful document. It defines so much of our American greatness. Many other countries look at the U.S. Constitution to craft their own. I would say that the New York State Constitution is not many pages long of so many random thoughts that have been added along the way. The New York State Constitution, I remember in law school reading different state constitutions, and the New York Constitution was a little bit more complex than I think it needed to be. But it's just my own personal opinion, just as I'm listening to your thoughts. But it's always good to strictly construe your Constitution, and you take an oath as an elected official to uphold that Constitution, and you have to take your oath very seriously. To your point about our veterans and that oath, our veterans upheld their oath during their service. They served our nation proudly, willing to lay down their life in protection of everything that makes our nation great. And when they come home, they don't always come home in one piece. Sometimes they might come home with the physical and mental wounds of war. Our Veterans Affairs Department right now today has had a director who's been there for several years, who I believe the time has come, even though I have so much respect for his military service, it's time for new leadership at the VA. I believe that there are people giving him bad advice. It's time for the VA to really move forward into the 21st century. They have not updated their technology, so we have hundreds of thousands of disability claims because the VA has refused to switch over from paper to computers. You have veterans dying on secret waiting lists all across this country, and it's outrageous. And I think we need to do more for our veterans with mental health problems, coming home with post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury. There's a lot more that our Veterans Affairs can be doing, one of which I think is so important is to change the leadership at the top.
Mr. Zeldin, if you were a congressman down in Washington, D.C., would you vote yes or no on the Paul Ryan budget plan?
I appreciate the question, and it's been interesting as I travel around the district. If I'm on WLNG or I'm on LI News Radio for an interview, there's always someone who is given the mission of asking that question on behalf of our congressman and the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And I thank you for doing that for them, and they appreciate your service. So the Paul Ryan budget is a budget that was voted on a few months back. We have multiple plans that are being discussed. At the end of 2013, there was a Paul Ryan crafted budget, which I don't know if you're talking about that one or the most recent one, but our actual federal budget, which was crafted by Paul Ryan. One of my problems with it, and the reason why I would have voted no, is that it cut pension benefits for our veterans. And it's, I think, outrageous that we were balancing the budget on the backs of our veterans. But I'll tell you, I'm going to use this opportunity, and you can, go back and please tell the congressman this is my message. Is that I look forward to our debate where the question gets asked, what is your plan to put our nation on a path to fiscal responsibility? And we can talk about what's right and what can be improved in Paul Ryan's budget. This congressman has refused to put forth a plan or get behind someone else's plan which would put our nation on a path towards having a balanced budget. So I'm going to use this opportunity, as I have in the past, that I cannot wait for the opportunity come this general election to stand up here, maybe back at this church or elsewhere, and I would just please ask the congressman, for all of us, that when he wants to show up at that debate and he wants to talk about the Paul Ryan budget, that he tells us which budget he's behind. Yeah. I think it's outrageous that he's been there for 12 years and he refuses to have the intestinal fortitude to get behind a plan that'll put our nation on a path to fiscal responsibility. That's why he's going to get fired in November.
Lee, Ron Maloney. Last Tuesday, myself and my wife Nancy and our daughter Caroline went up to New York State in Albany. And I hope next time, we're going to go up in a couple weeks, that next time when we go to the Senate chambers, when we put in our name to call you, that hopefully you have time to come out and see us. But we did speak to a few of the senators. We spoke to Ken LaValle's office, and then we personally met with Senator Flanagan outside, and we had a nice chat with him. And we specifically went up there for something We specifically went up there for something I never thought I would be supporting, and that was the Compassionate Care Act in New York. And that, if anybody not familiar with that, that's the medical marijuana type of thing. And I was just wondering your stance on it. And number two, since this is also a national and a state issue, what do you think about the 10th Amendment and the importance of it too? Okay, thank you.
I'm going to need maybe a little more than 2 minutes. Actually, no, I can answer the first part very quickly. If the bill came up to the floor for a vote, I would vote no. And I understand there are examples, of people who are really suffering. And as far as compassion goes, I tell you, the bill is very well named. All of us have compassion for people who are suffering so much, and that's the hardest part of this issue. I will tell you that some people, not you, a lot of people have come up to Albany, they're advocating for me, and I swear they're high when they're lobbying me. And I have a problem with the manner in which it would be dispensed. The way the bill is currently drafted by Senator Savino, I hope even though I'd be voting no, if somehow they rally the support to do it, her bill needs to get approved. But when that bill comes to the floor for a vote, I just don't believe that us as legislators should be playing doctor. And if it's a medicine, that the FDA should be studying it and regulating it just like every other medicine. And I say that, I swear, with so much compassion to people who are struggling so much. I just don't want us as legislators to be playing doctor. The 10th Amendment to our Constitution is so very important. Our federal government, so often, whether it is through congressional statute, it is executive order by this president, it is regulatory with all sorts of federal agencies. Our federal government steps on states' rights each and every day throughout the day. And I think that when we advocate for limited government, when we advocate for when we advocate for states' rights. Education is one great issue where Common Core, there was no way that they were able to get states to sign on to Common Core without dangling money out as a carrot, because it wouldn't stand alone on its own merit. And so often we see the federal government getting states to buy into federal programs. Sometimes it's just mandated. Other times they have to essentially bribe them. And I think that our federal government is going a lot further than it has to on so many different issues. And there needs to be more of a respect for states' rights.
Senator Zeldin, you had just mentioned something a while ago about states' rights, and as I look around the room, I see many of my colleagues in Tea Party and also as well Oath Keepers here. One of the concerns that I would be worried about is what actually has been going on with the BLM, okay, and what they're doing in terms of taking land and how heavy-handedly, regardless of what happened in Nevada, regardless of how we feel, whether he was right or wrong, the way they came down on him, militarily speaking, was something that we all should be afraid of. And you had American versus American pointing weapons at one another, which in my mind is dangerous. As a Vietnam veteran, okay, I am very, very concerned about that and the way this government handles situations such as that. What would you do when you're in Congress?
First off, thank you for your service. I'm okay. Thank you for your service. And coming off of Memorial Day weekend, it's a renewed energy. And hopefully, our neighbors just remember to honor and thank our veterans at every opportunity. I've been following what's going on. I don't know if I could say it quite as well as you as far as how bad of a problem it is. Our federal government, I've seen it at the state level, often takes their powers too far. You have bureaucrats who, in their little corner, just enjoy testing their power to the extreme, and it makes them feel good about it. We see it in New York with the DEC. This morning we had a press conference with the Long Island Railroad. Literally, we were going onto people's yards and cutting down their trees from their backyards, creating these buffers that people always had. And you have government workers who are just literally walking onto people's properties and doing what they wish, and they feel like it's their right. I think that we certainly can't accept it whenever we have any federal agents who are overstepping their boundaries, infringing on private property rights, and making law-abiding citizens feel threatened if they don't comply with a government that is going too far, stepping on their own power, maybe to make them feel good about themselves in their little corners. And I think that there's a lot of political encouragement that was given on the other side of the aisle to those agents who went too far. And I think that regardless of where where anyone stands, where any American stands on the personal beliefs of anyone who is impacted like this, it's just about doing the right thing. And our federal government showed it's another great example. It's a terrible occurrence of our government going too far for some agent who wanted to test their power.
I'm a Catholic Holocaust survivor. I survived Hitler. I survived Stalin. I came to America because I wanted to. I became a citizen because I loved America. Now, I find out that American people or somebody approves murdering 59 million babies, abortion, and now they're helping our senior veterans to an early grave. Where are we going as Americans? What would you do to change our thinking, our morality, or our choices?
I'm pro-life. my daughters were born 14 and a half weeks early. They were less than a pound and a half when they were born. And I've had the unique opportunity of seeing what life looks like that early. They were in their 25th week. And now they're 7 and a half. They have caught up to their peers. They're doing great in school. One of the biggest challenges campaigning so much is spending a minute away from them. Although when it gets warmer, they get to come to some more events with me, which is nice. They were with us yesterday. I've had the opportunity just very personally to be impacted by this issue, and I'm so grateful that my daughters had the opportunity to be born, to grow. I'm excited for them and their future. I'm concerned for their generation and the direction this country is heading. And you know what? Morality is one component of it. We are growing up. I live a half mile now from where I grew up in Shirley. And when I was around their age, maybe a little bit older, I was free to get on my bike and just ride wherever. And I would come back for lunch, or come back for dinner, but I was free to travel the streets, and my parents felt secure. And I think that the strength of family, the strength of crafting a strong sense of right from wrong in our kids, to have the right surroundings, whether it's friends or parents and family and at school, that there is so much more that we can be doing as a nation that you can't legislate. Sometimes you see government trying to legislate morality, and it's really in a place like here, at church, where you may be able to learn so much more than you can on the streets around your home. So there's a lot that goes into this. I wanted to answer your question very briefly right out of the gate, but really we can write books and novels on the best way forward as a nation to help make sure that our families are stronger, and there's so many components of that.
Thank you, Senator Zeldin, for your service to our country and to our state. Question for you. I serve as a committeeman for the Republican Party, and I'm getting specific questions as I go door to door from constituents, and they get the flyers from your opponent, Mr. Demos, and on 3 specific questions, they pepper me, because I'm supporting you. You and I have history, and I appreciate your support for me when I ran for the state legislature as a pro-family, pro-life candidate, and that shows you your true conservative credentials. But they asked me to defend what Demos is accusing you of, specifically with voting. And I know you don't favor the SAFE Act that you actually want to repeal. I know you don't favor Obamacare that you actually want to repeal, and that you don't favor higher taxes. But those claims are made in his literature, and all of us have probably gotten 15 to 20 of Demos's flyers in the mail. It's almost daily to get these things that we know are probably paid for by, the Democratic machine coming from various parts of the country. But specifically, especially as a committeeman, serving my constituents and advocating for your candidacy, and us all who are hopefully here to advocate for your candidacy, how do we specifically answer those 3 attacks that Mr. Demos so consistently tries to levy against you?
I have never supported Obamacare, never will. When you go to a door, if someone asks you about it, just tell them that. I have never supported Obamacare, never will. Never in any way, shape, or form. And if they ask, well, what about Senate Bill so-and-so that your opponent says funded Obamacare? The U.S. Congress funded Obamacare, not the New York State Legislature. Obamacare is in all 50 states. The federal government spends money on Obamacare in all 50 states. Our budget every single year accounts for approximately $48 billion of federal funding, like Medicaid. If I vote no on the budget, and the budget goes down, the federal government is still spending that money on Obamacare in New York. And Obamacare is in the most conservative Republican states in the entire country. Oklahoma, Texas, South Carolina. We can pass a law in Albany that says no Obamacare in New York. And we'd still have it. It's a federal law. Congress passed it, the president signed it, the Supreme Court upheld it. They are, let me give you, and I'm going to hopefully grab an extra minute or two if it's okay on this question. Because I want to give you a specific example. They say that page whatever, line whatever, was $24.3 million of state funding. I don't know if you've seen it. They just keep repeating it. The fact is, if you actually go to that page and line, I'll tell you two parts of that. I'm kind of getting into the weeds here. Don't go this far in the weeds unless you have to. $24.3 million, and it says ... RE period 3 million. Now, if my opponent knew how to read a state budget, or if he cared what was true and what's not, it's actually a reappropriation of $3.5 million. So it's not an appropriation for 24.3, it's actually a reappropriation of 3.5. Now they say that's for Obamacare. It's not even for Obamacare. It says online enrollment portal, but it's not Obamacare. Years ago, before we had Obamacare, New York State changed to a system where we were able to people were able to sign up online for Medicaid. That's what that was. So here, he's kind of preying upon the fact that we have people who are working, people who can't read every single word of every single bill. So he's trying to prey upon that, to hoping that voters are uninformed. He can educate them his way with millions of dollars, with all of these expensive advertising, convince people otherwise. He says that I raised taxes 104 times. 100% untrue. 100% untrue. They talk about income taxes and sales taxes, where if you actually get into the weeds to read what they're talking about, it's just 100% untrue. The SAFE Act funding was another example. We actually pulled out the money from the budget. There was a line item for the SAFE Act. Governor Cuomo then indicated that he was going to pull money out of a pot that he controls and use it to fund the SAFE Act, which is outrageous, which is unacceptable. But it's not like there was a line item in the budget. It said this governor indicated, and I think he might be using a technology budget, I think that it may be what he was looking at, that he was going to pull money out of it. So if you could, let's just say we know and we defund the technology budget, they could just, he could just pull money out of some other pot. And I think that's wrong. But, that's just a little bit of the background on those issues. They're not saying it because it's true. They're saying because it polls well.